Hey there, guys, gals, and those in between. Welcome back. And after the rather extensive deep dive into that of the Silent Hill series, I wanted to take a detour into a game I greatly enjoyed. And I was not ready to tackle another Silent Hill game. So instead, I want to talk about a game that I greatly enjoy that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. It's a game I found in a bargain bin, and that is Level 5's magnum opus, known as Rogue Galaxy. What was made to rival the likes of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, but never quite reached those lofty heights. So let's dive in, but before we do, sit back, grab a frosty beverage, put on your pirate hat as we sail the high seas, or rather high stars, in Rogue Galaxy.
No big deal.
Now, before we start with the game, like usual, let's talk about the developers and how they got to Rogue Galaxy itself. Level 5 was created in 1999 by President and CEO Akihiro Hino. He got his start in video games, programming Japanese exclusives, and a port of Prince of Persia, before helping program what would legitimately be a genre-defying classic in Dr. Hauser, which I just found out exists. It was a 3DO Japanese exclusive, which, yeah, that probably is the whole reason I had no idea this existed before I started doing research on this video. Not the Japan thing, I'm a degenerate weeb, so there's quite a few only in Japan things I'm aware of, but a 3DO Japanese exclusive actually worth a damn is a shocker. Partially the reason I love making these videos is finding cool gems like Dr. Hauser. And no, I didn't intend to mix survival horror with RPGs again, but I guess spooky nerds and number nerds just go hand in hand. Now, even though it's only been released in Japan, it's very similar to Final Fantasy V in that it was supported via fan translations. Barts will always be butts to me. And it's seen by many as an innovator of the modern survival horror, it being the first fully 3D survival horror game. Yes, Alone in the Dark came out 2 years earlier, but only the player character and other assets were 3D. You were still confined to pre-rendered backgrounds. Dr. Hauser was the first fully 3D survival horror where you could switch to a first-person view, something that wouldn't become the norm for survival horror games until the PS2 era at that. And reviewers raved about it from its tone, atmosphere, and yes, how good the game actually looked for the time, using the awesome power of the 3DO, which I'm probably the only person who's ever said that non-ironically. Many noting they were able to get a PC quality game on a home system. And needless to say, this is another game I might have to do a dive into, or at least play a little more, because yeah, it came out only 2 years after Alone in the Dark, and even the creator of Silent Hill said that Dr. Hauser is the game that made him want to get into the video game industry. So without Dr. Hauser, Silent Hill simply doesn't exist. If you want to play it though, you're going to have to pirate it, because no one actually knows who owns Dr. Hauser. Yes, I just really like that title. It's housing time. Panasonic, the creators of the 3DO, don't have a game division, and River Hillsoft, the developers, declared bankruptcy in 2004, and a lot of their assets were sold off, Konami buying the bulk of them. If that includes Dr. Hauser, no one really knows. It's really murky. So short of Konami saying the game that inspired Silent Hill and randomly drops an emulated version for modern consoles, yeah, sail the high seas. After Hino was done programming again what many would consider a magnum opus, he then worked on the Overblood series of games. But it does have some pretty decent sound design in regards to acting, which was not the norm for the time. Another example of Hino really going above and beyond and pushing limits. The second Overblood was PAL only, and after that he founded his own company, that being Level 5. The reason he named it Level 5? According to him, he wanted the games he made to be akin to going to a 5-star restaurant, thus Level 5. The first game they released is really one of their most famous, that being Dark Cloud, an ambitious title that attempted to mix an action RPG with city building, and of course dungeon crawling. While at first having slow sales, Dark Cloud went on to become a critical and commercial darling. Ironically, more so in the States than in its native Japan. which for a JRPG is kind of odd, but what can you do? After that, they made a sequel known as Dark Chronicle in Japan, or Dark Cloud 2 in the States, which was seen as a major improvement on its predecessor, which again was a pretty good game, albeit with some flaws that will be important later. So after making 2 good games, Square Enix decided, hey, you guys can develop the next Dragon Quest game. What? Now, looking back, that's an insane decision. They had just made 2 games at this point, and Hino himself was directing, having only directed 1 game prior, that being Overblood 2. And this was Dragon Quest VIII. This game needed to be a big success from Square. They had purchased Enix for their properties, the big one they wanted being Dragon Quest, which while always doing okay here in the States, was always vastly more popular in its native home. Like insanely more popular. As in, they only release mainline Dragon Quest games on Saturdays because they're afraid of too many people skipping work or school. And while it's not mandated by the government, that's a huge myth, the publisher Enix themselves decided it was a pretty big issue, and thus Saturday releases. So Dragon Quest ruled the East, while Final Fantasy ruled the West. Once more, I plan on a deeper dive into the importance of Dragon Quest VIII, but I can never see a situation like this happening again. There's no way Final Fantasy XVII is going to be developed by someone with a similar resume. Things were different then. So with only 2 games, it was decided Level 5 would handle it. And while yes, series mainstays like Yuji Horii were running the ship, Hino was the captain, and it paid off like gangbusters. The game more than doubled the US sales of Dragon Quest VII. It also sold great in Japan, which it always does, but that US figure was crucial. Dragon Quest VII sold around 200,000 copies. Dragon Quest VIII, around 430,000. That leap to almost 500,000 paid dividends for Square, not to mention its critical reception. Dragon Quest VIII is considered by many one of the best Dragon Quest games and just one of the best RPGs on the PS2, if not of any RPG period. Honestly, thinking about Dragon Quest VIII has me kind of perturbed that Square hasn't done an HD port to modern systems, only that 3DS remake. I need my mouse grandpa in high definition. While developing one of the best games for the PS2, they were also contacted by Microsoft in an attempt to work that same magic they just did for Square. Dragon Quest needed a boost in the West, and Xbox desperately needed some momentum in Japan. Thus, Level 5 began working on True Fantasy Online. Being shown at the 2003 Xbox presentation, this was supposed to be one of the things to help the Xbox overseas, and Hino jumped at the opportunity to do an MMO, having been a big fan of the Ultima series, and like everything, he wanted to do things differently. Once more, it was cel-shaded, so it was bright and vibrant, and the emphasis was to be on a community. Hino's thoughts was that while online was a great thing, most online games at the time were about competing with each other rather than cooperation, and he wanted to change that with Fantasy Life Online. The whole theme was that of life, and you being whatever you want. You want to be a warrior? Sure, go for it. Want to be a baker or maybe make jewelry, sell it to others? You can do that. The overall idea was not to lock in players, and just like life, you can start as one thing and transition into another if you liked it. The goal was to appeal to a more casual fan base, as MMOs at the time had a reputation for being a bit unfriendly towards newer players. I'd argue many still have that reputation. So instead of levels, it was your skills that determined everything, and those skills would go up during use. Lastly, they wanted the players to help shape the overall narrative, with player input deciding the world in years to come. Early reviews of the game were largely positive, with many noting their interest in wanting to see the game unfold to what it could be. Sadly, it was not meant to be. Microsoft canceled it, saying the game didn't meet internal quality standards and had dropped the title. And it's true, Level 5 did have issues in its development, since they never did an MMO before, but a huge issue was voice chat. Microsoft really wanted voice chat, as to them, an integral part of the Xbox Live experience was voice chatting. And level 5 was having issues in implementing that for servers that could hold thousands of people on it. Which that might be fine in Japan, but that would be an absolute nightmare if it ever got here in the US. I say this as a veteran of those old Call of Duty lobbies. Fantasy Life Online American version would just be a few thousand people spamming racial and gendered slurs. Hino contends that it wasn't internal quality standards for the reason that Microsoft canned the project even though it was near completion. Rather, he says Microsoft realized one game was not going to make a huge difference in Japan when it comes to the Xbox. So instead of investing a lot of time and money into something like an MMO, they just canceled it. Either way, Level 5 didn't put all their eggs in one basket, and they had quite a few other things in the works.
No big deal.
Now, Rogue Galaxy was hinted as far back as 2003, which to be clear was when Level 5 was still working on Dragon Quest VIII, Fantasy Life Online, and the PSP game Jeanne d'Arc. Man, these guys were putting in some serious work. Originally, many people thought this was going to simply be another entry in the Dark Cloud series, and there does exist some promotional material that seems to indicate this was the original plan in its very early stages before it became its own IP. Originally, it was supposed to have a cyberspace theme, but Hino decided it wouldn't mesh with the studio, thus it became a space opera instead. And from the start, this was something that Sony had high hopes for, since they were the ones publishing it. Hino himself had lofty aspirations, as he said this game would be his magnum opus. Pretty ballsy to say after once more directing what many consider one of the best games of all time. But he was confident. He wanted Rogue Galaxy to match Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest in terms of scale, scope, and of course, worldwide recognition. Which, as a side note, my parents know almost nothing about video games, but even then, they're tangentially aware that Final Fantasy exists and is a video game series. No other RPG has that kind of cultural staying power, and Sony wanted that power. They wanted an RPG series that they could milk for money and make sequels out of, while also forgetting about The Legend of Dragoon and Wild Arms. Guess Sony forgot they already had two popular RPGs, but what's the third one? I'm sure what happened to those two will in no way foreshadow Rogue Galaxy's fate. Yep, not at all. Back in the past, Sony was putting a lot of stock in this game. During the PlayStation Meeting 2005, after Sony spoke of all the best-selling titles on the PS2 and showed trailers for their upcoming games, they actually introduced Hino on stage to talk about Rogue Galaxy. Even during the Tokyo Game Show, while Sony had a big production regarding the PS3, they also had demos for Rogue Galaxy as one of the games that they were pushing. Famitsu even ran a survey and found that Rogue Galaxy was the fourth most desired game from their readers, trailing behind titles like Kingdom Hearts 2 and Tales of Abyss. Even Japan's Computer Entertainment Supplier Association, boy, that is a mouthful. That trade group listed Rogue Galaxy as a future winner. Basically an award that designates they imagine the game selling well when it releases and will be a greatest hits. While the business people were salivating at the prospects of this game, Hino was doing his best to live up to his own expectations. Originally, he wanted Rogue Galaxy to be just that, a galaxy with massive procedurally generated worlds. Yes, he wanted No Man's Sky before that was even a thing. And that was honestly asking way too much of the PlayStation 2. Hino's other goal was also the almost complete removal of any and all loading times, which he even admitted that as a programmer himself, he knew that was a tough ask. But this was something he wanted to do, and he felt that it was feasible with the technology at the time, even if it would be difficult. And yeah, he actually did it, so props to him. The worlds in this game are massive, and you really only have one, maybe two loading screens. An initial one, and whenever you travel to another planet, and that's it. You can explore these planets, enter new homes, new areas, get into battles seamlessly. early reviews are littered with people saying how impressed everyone is by this technical marvel that they were able to achieve without diminishing the game's visuals. They didn't sacrifice one for the other, and that they enjoyed the overall gameplay. Sadly, that was in 2005, and the game was actually not released stateside for an additional 2 years, which I feel personally hampered the title. In that 2-year localization effort, the game went through some retooling, with Hino even remarking that this would be the true vision of the game, that there would be various fixes, which funny enough, this actually upset some Japanese players. This is probably one of the few times where a game got enhanced for the English release. I mean, yeah, Final Fantasy did add the Ruby and Emerald weapons, but the change here was extensive. They added over 2,000 lines of dialogue, did various gameplay fixes to address concerns that many Japanese players felt towards the vanilla game. That some parts were easy, some parts were hard, some were just cumbersome, and that it was just too uneven. They also fixed the Burning Strike. Before it was random, now you can choose when to use it. Lastly, they added an entirely new planet with its own story, not to mention all the items and weapons they added. This version was re-released in Japan called the Director's Cut, which, seeing as Hino said it's his true vision come to life, was apt. Both versions came out to actually pretty good reviews across the board, but we'll get to how the game fared later. Now it's time to talk about the actual game itself.
No big deal.
Now, as I've already stated, Rogue Galaxy is a technical marvel in its ability to have these giant areas and to seamlessly move into combat. That's something that even Square couldn't do with Final Fantasy XII, which is still a great looking game years later, or Kingdom Hearts 2 for that matter. And while some people might not enjoy that the number of worlds are rather sparse, I've seen some remark that the worlds are merely expansions of your desert level, ice level tropes. I can still enjoy what level 5 did and admit that even from the jungles to the neon-soaked film noir world are all a joy to look at. This is complemented by the art style with the use of cel shading that I feel really works well for what is supposed to be a grand space opera, an adventure into the stars and the unknown. And it's a shame that now today, if you use cel shading, it's strictly for anime arena fighters that are okay at best. I played this game once before doing this review about 20 years ago, and if you provided me with screenshots of this game, I would still easily be able to say with confidence the source. I don't think you can do that with many games that have gone the hyper-realistic route. The feel of the game is compounded by the music made by Tomohito Nishira, who's the same person behind the Dark Cloud series of music. So if you dug Dark Cloud, you'll love what's here. Honestly, I'm writing this review a few weeks after playing the game and I can still easily recall some tunes, so you know it's good. Plus, any RPG worth its salt needs battle music that you can enjoy, since you're going to be hearing it about 1,000,000 times, if not more, before actually beating the game. And speaking of battles, this is where the game really shines. Rogue Galaxy is an action RPG that does some unique things. Firstly, you do have a bar that determines how many attacks you can do. You can do normal attacks with your main weapon, and each character has a sub-weapon, typically a long-range option with some variants. The sub-weapon is unique because it also has its own meter to reload. Use it too much, you have to sit and wait. Now, you can only do that twice before you're no longer able to use it in that specific battle. Now, whichever one you're using will deplete your action bar until it runs out and you need to recharge. While in the recharge phase, if you block an attack, you'll instantly refill the bar. Now, I do wish this was tweaked a bit because blocking never refills your attack bar unless you've spent it all. I would rather that when you block, it fills portions up. This would mesh well with the game's more combat-oriented style and reward players who properly block in the rhythm of battle, especially because using items like healing items or abilities will also drain your action bar. During battle, you can have up to 2 allies, but you can only directly play as one of them. You can always switch, and there are some differences between characters. For instance, Kasala's weapons are both short range, with her sub being a kicking attack, which can be spammed. Kinda odd she needs to recharge her feet, but we can just say it's her cardio bar. And Lilica, whose main and sub weapons are swapped. Her main weapon is a long-range arrow, and her sub is a knife. You can choose any character you wish, though the playstyles aren't radically different. And though you can only control one character, the computer will control the other two, and they are by no means dumb. The interesting thing this game does is every so often your allies will make suggestions as to what skills or items you want them to use, and they're all pertinent to the task at hand. Is someone running a bit low HP wise? Well, then they say, hey, can I use a healing item? And they won't do it if you've only taken a scratch. Is there a status ailment? Hey, press this button and they'll solve it. This help keeps up the pace of battle, and while yes, you can definitely pause things in order to direct them yourselves, I really only found myself doing that in a few challenging fights with some of the post-game content. Your allies definitely don't feel like a burden and will offer to help with healing, or use their abilities to help end the battle. Unlike most RPGs where leveling is the main way of getting stronger, here it's all about your weapons and abilities. So for sure some lingering influence from that scrapped MMO. Your weapons all have a specific level showing what level you need to equip it and how powerful it is. Typically a higher level equals more power, but there does exist some unique weapons that all have a letter attached like Sigma, Alpha, etc. After a certain amount of fights, their EXP bar will be filled to the max, and you can then combine them to make more powerful variants. The one catch is that both weapons' EXP needs to be filled, and it can only be the same type. So no mixing gauntlets and axes or guns and bows. So just give Danny DeVito here 2 weapons of a similar level, and he'll combine them. And if the results will actually be worse, he'll actually say, hey, maybe don't do this. Besides combining, after making a weapon, you can also master them, which means that after you fill that EXP bar, after each battle they'll gain a point in a specific element. There's no real reason to do this. Essentially, each enemy has a specific elemental weakness, but the boost from fully mastering a weapon is so negligible that you're better off just not paying attention to it until the end game. Now for abilities, instead of it being tied to your level, the game has what's known as the Revelation Flow. It's similar in look and feel to the sphere grid of Final Fantasy X. Here you acquire items to fill the board to get new skills that are passive in nature, along with direct attacks to enemies, and buffs and debuffs. You can only select a few at first, but over time you get access to more powerful skills as the board fills up. Now the items needed come one of 2 ways. You can either get them from enemy drops, or you can buy them. Items that you buy in shop will actually tell you if they're what you need to learn a new skill, so that's pretty nice. The issue here is, well, the enemy drop rates in this game can be pretty abysmal. See, in this game, like most RPGs, items are tied to enemies, which makes sense. You don't want players to get over leveled. The issue being some of those drop rates can be pitifully low. This only really makes sense at the very start of the game, where you might find 1 or 2 rare items that you need, but can fill maybe 7, 8, sometimes 12 or more skills. So it makes sense for you to prioritize who you want to buff. But later in the game, that same drop might go from rare to just being common, and sometimes you can even buy them in shops. If that was every item needed, this wouldn't be an issue. The issue is that some items are just rare and will never become common drops, will never be sold in shops, and can be used to fill 15 or so different spots in the Revelation board. And the game tells you none of this, so you would need to look online to see which specific enemy drops which specific item you might need to complete a skill set. When I said drop rates can be painfully low, I meant in the single digits. There are times where I hunted for an hour to get one specific item I needed, only to realize I still need 10 more of those. This seems like a massive oversight for a game where, again, your abilities are the main form of offense. So you're going to want those items in order to get stronger. I think this could have been easily fixed with what's already in the game. Every so often, during a random encounter, you'll receive a challenge, a special mission. That might say win using only certain characters, win without using abilities, win without getting damaged, and so on. Now, doing so drops hunter coins. I think instead it should have just been, hey, when you do this, you get every drop in that area. That way you can reward players for their skills. Because again, combat is fun for the most part. I know there were some balance fixes, but there are things that drag the game down. Firstly, even at high levels, it's really easy to die. Even early on, some enemies will just spam attacks with 0 knockback and just destroy you in a matter of seconds. Even in my high 50s, I was still losing allies to normal attacks. This is footage from the end of the game. I'm around level 70, a point that would make most RPGs smooth sailing. And yet here, this guy was still taking massive chunks of my life as if I owed him money. Thankfully, save points are plentiful, so if you're wise, you're never going to lose too much data if you wipe out. That doesn't make it any less annoying. To add to that, while most enemies you can easily defeat, some you have to do special workarounds, either removing their shield, which means a charged attack, or using a buff skill that destroys said shield. However, the camera and lock-on never seem to work right, so usually I would be fighting it to just lock on and destroy the shielded enemy, while again losing a lot of HP in the process. Other enemies you have to jump on or jump on to hit them. I found them more cumbersome and felt they broke the intended flow of combat. The worst are the barrier enemies. The only way to stop them is to equip this one special gun, which you're never going to have from the get-go. So you're going to have to open the menu, switch weapons, target each enemy with one shot to break their barrier, and then start fighting. It made me want to flee more times than not when I saw a troublesome foe, because instead of fighting how I wanted when a tiresome enemy appeared, I instead had to fight how the game wants, and usually that meant using a wipeout skill for the normal enemies and just laying it on those troublesome types. Which is a shame because I do feel like the system is interesting, but I'd be lying if I didn't say halfway through the game I was just spamming a lot of multi-hit skills to one-shot enemies and move on. But battling isn't the only thing this game has, because there are side quests galore.
No big deal.
Yeah, every RPG has side quests and things to do, and this game is no exception. Honestly, there might be more side quests than any RPG I've ever played. Now, side quests play a pretty important role in other games of the genre. Typically, they either lead to equipment, skills, special battles, and things you might not otherwise have been a part of unless you take part in finding 100 bird feathers for your dead-ass brother. It's all either for goods or glory. Suffice to say, that really isn't the deal here. Now, there are a lot of side stuff to do and many are fun, but they don't really properly reward you. The first is bounty hunting. Essentially, you have to defeat a certain amount of monsters to get points, and then you use those points to rank up and become the best hunter in the galaxy. Now, story-wise, I do like this because you're told that monster activity has skyrocketed recently, so it would make sense as to why so many people are competing. And after each chapter, your rank will go up or down because the other people listed are also hunting. The issue is that some enemies are like items, rare, in that they'll only show up in specific areas of each world, and no, the game does not tell you. Once more, you need a strategy guide or the internet. So instead of what it could have been, which is a helpful hint into guiding players to leveling up, and instead becomes a grind of running away until you find the specific enemy you need. And the items you gained for becoming number 1 aren't that great. Because of the combination system that this game hinges on, every single reward I got was inferior to everything I had on hand. This is similar to quarries, which are fun. Quarries are special bounties, basically special bosses you can fight, provided you have the correct bait. Again, these were fun, but the rewards were negligible. Sure, you might get a costume that slightly boosts your defense, but I beat this game before without doing so, so it's purely cosmetic. You'll also gain access to the factory, where you have to do a fun puzzle game. Essentially, all around the world, you'll see people with bubbles around their head. Talk to them, and they'll give you blueprints in order to make new items and weapons. Most blueprints will tell you specifically what they need, Others, you need to do some mild thinking. It might say you need a cold shield or a hot stone. The goal is to make sure all your processed goods arrive to the combiner at the same time. So it's a puzzle game, which I did enjoy, but again, minus 1 or 2 items, everything for the most part was just taking up space in my inventory. Even a 7-star sword, which is supposed to be this big mythical item, I just tossed it back. The 7-star swords are also kinda half-assed. These are legendary blades, and you gotta talk to people and track them down that date back thousands of years, and they're paperweights. How much better would it be if they could change? For instance, you create one sword in a factory. What if that sword became Simon, your robot ally's best weapon? Just a thought, these are supposed to be mystical items, why can't they change into the weapons that your allies are using? Lastly, there's Insectatron, basically battle bugs. Get bugs, battle them, win prizes to breed stronger bugs, and yeah, I hate to repeat myself, but there's nothing of value here. Unless you want a costume and battling bugs is really your thing, I don't dislike these side quests because they are hardy. It's more so they could have used some tinkering and giving us more for our effort. So that said, unless you're trying to plat the game, I can't recommend them minus save for the quarries for some sweet EXP. And because some of those fights are fun. And for the hunter challenges I mentioned earlier, doing those earns you coins you can get to use new licenses, which gives you discounts at stores. Makes it so you can buy special inventory, and with how item heavy this game is, you're gonna want that. So that was actually pretty useful. But everything else you can skip for the most part. Now, as usual, we're gonna talk about the story, so click here to skip as we get into the story of space pirates in Rogue Galaxy.
No big deal.
Now, Rogue Galaxy takes place a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. I jest, but yeah, you start in a desert planet currently under occupation as a young teenager traverses the stars and discovers his destiny has galactic reverberations. Rogue Galaxy wears its influences on its sleeves proudly, from Star Wars to Space Captain Harlock. Now, your home planet Tatooine, Rosa, is under military occupation. There are one of 2 major powers named in the Wilheiser system, where the game takes place. They are at war with the Draxian Empire, and thus to protect Rosa, Longardia has placed it under military occupation for their safety and forbidding the people living there from leaving, effectively keeping them under lock and key. Jaster goes and fulfills his quota and thinks how he wants to leave when, well, madness happens and his wish is granted. A giant beast arrives and you meet a mysterious man. The man gives you a sword, the Desert Seeker, one of the 7-star swords, and you are found by Simon and Steve, who are well acted. Everyone here is actually really well acted. It's a highlight. Even the producer, Naohiga, mentioned that he thinks the English cast is just as good as the Japanese one, which is a massive compliment seeing as the Japanese cast had some big name actors in its homeland. So Steve and Simon think you're a legendary hunter named the Desert Claw, because you have one of the 7-star swords, the Desert Seeker. Jaster just goes along with this, defeats the monsters, and takes them up on his offer to leave this planet, because, well, it's basically a prison. Before you leave, you head to the church to say goodbye to Raul, someone that was basically your father and who looked after you all these years. Heading to the ship, you meet the rest of the crew, including the cat mascot, Mancha, who tells you that Captain Dorgangoa is sleeping, and you then meet Kisala, his daughter, and another hunter named Zegram. Zegram seems to be the only person who thinks Jaster isn't the real Desert Claw, cause yeah, here's this kid in rags, there's gotta be something up. Outside with Kisala, Jaster remarks that he's finally in space, and she catches him because he's supposed to be a legendary hunter, but she keeps on floating along. You're attacked by monsters and your engine stalls, so now you're in Juraika. And it just so happens there you can get a fruit to get booster oil for your engines. Super convenient. I'm only joking, of course, no issue with plot narratives like this. Zegra mentions that it's sweltering, which, yeah bro, look at all the layers you're wearing. Pretty sure you got some leather under there. Zegra mentions that the only people here are the Burkakwa, and the way he talks, you would think he was taken as a POW by them. It's funny because they throw spears to ward you off, you hear how they hate outsiders, but you also just kind of see them walking around and are kind of happy to chat with you. This is also the first area I got my first party wipeout. I opened the chest and there was a mimic inside who tore my ass to shreds. So I feel like the game pretty early gives the player a guide to saying, hey, save often, which is game design I feel is lost now. Instead, we now get 2-hour tutorials. As you're exploring, you see a kid who's collecting bugs for Insectron. Zegra warns you that he's seen a lot of men lose themselves to it, which, yeah, you know, if Insectron was real, you'd probably get ads on this video sponsored by FanDuel over 2 bugs battling it out. Walking further, you encounter 2 girls, Zegra Max Jaster, which is his type, which, for the love of God, I hope he is not about to say the actual child when a monster attacks you. This giant toad. You beat it down and then meet Danny DeVito here. He's technically called Toady, but even in my notes I kept calling him Froggy. So Danny here states that the monster you beat used to be his friend, but something called Rune mutated all the monsters in the area, including Danny. It's actually a pretty big plot point, this Rune thing, and explaining why monsters are popping up more in the galaxy, and probably why the game asks you to hunt multiple of them. I typically do like when a game gives some justification for monsters. Danny here was also changed and offers his services so he can leave with the group. He's what you use to combine weapons. He will offer to analyze your weapons and offer recommendations. And in order to get Zegram's best costume, you need to analyze 100 weapons and make 50 combos. Seems easy, but Danny here kinda sucks. The recipes he offers aren't the most optimal unions. You'll find that the best mergers are just the ones where you combine your 2 strongest weapons together. But if you really want that costume, do the bare minimum and never ask him for advice ever again. And for Jaster, your original sword, the Desert Seeker, it actually still be upgraded every now and again so long as you check. You are then introduced to the person who will become your new teammate, Lilica. And boy, she's someone who arrived too early. Could you imagine all the degeneracy artists would conjure up for an Amazonian muscle mommy? Cause I can't. Lilica was with her sister because her sister is said to be sacrificed to stop a plague that's spreading throughout the tribe. You join Lilica as she defies the tribe intent on saving her sister, where it's revealed when she was younger a beast attacked her family, and Lilica tried to stop it, but she was still a child, so the beast killed her mom, and the shock left her sister blind. Racing to the sacrificial altar, you see that the god was the beast itself responsible for the plague, using it to get sacrifices. You kill the beast and Lilica is banished for the tribe for killing their god, the chief remarking that she needs to see the galaxy because her tribe needs to change and go forward. And when Lilica returns, she will be the new chief and be the one to guide them. The game then cuts to some new figures whose names have yet to be introduced but are clearly the bad guys. I love how blatantly anime the evil secretary is. Besides having massive milkers, even her shirt is designed to be like, hey look, anime titties. With the oil obtained, it's time to renew our stickers. Gotta say, I love that the start of our grand space journey is just making sure our vehicle is street legal. As they said, yeah, without updating their license, they can't really stop anywhere but the planet DMV to get it renewed. Also, I love how pirates are somehow more responsible than half the people I know in real life that are driving on tags from the Obama administration when he was elected the first time. The team switches up as you have Simon and Lilica. It's off to get our stickers. All we need is our ID, proof of insurance, birth certificate, social security card, and a signed copy of the original Magna Carta. Why yes, the DMV has been annoying me in real life lately, how could you tell? There you meet these 2 total simps who are sipping over this VTuber named Mio. While trying to get your stickers, Zegram out of sight sets off a bomb and the crew are labeled as terrorists, and thrown into jail. Luckily, their cell has this guy who's also breaking out. Again, quite lucky. I'm not really a big fan of the prison. Again, it's impressive how much the game was able to just, jam in here. But prisons are never very inspiring, just hallways after hallways, which it is a prison. Here, you also start to get some more annoying enemies that can just spam you until you're dead. Going higher, you see the first boss again, or rather its corpse. It's discovered that this facility is using Rune to run experiments and create monsters. The warden is doing all this, allowing these experiments in the hopes of bringing his beloved back. The team beats him, Zegrum comes to finish the job, but seeing the picture leaves him be, and he simply says, "Don't let her go this time." Though, sadly later, the big-boobed anime girl appears and kills him. Outside the prison, you discover the person you were with is an admiral. He's part of the peace faction of the Lungardian military. He's looking to get a treaty, or at the very least broker a ceasefire. And the pro-war union, and well, Datron, the people that produce the weapons, can't have that, so they locked him up. Okay, quick trip to county to get your license, but before that, Steve sees a mother and child and just leaves. The pair are looking for Sho, who was the husband and father. Obvious foreshadowing is obvious. So now, instead of Simon, you get Steve. And you head to get your stickers finally. Gotta say, I love how Lilica is just done with Mio. Mio says that, well, the servers are down, so still no license. Honestly, again, I find it funny that a big portion of this grand space adventure is literally just trying to make sure your ship is operable. It seems that the reason everyone is held up is because of the mainframe at the Datron Corp that runs everything has been held hostage by a former employer. So it's off to Datron. The police stop you, but you agree to take on the job as Steve talks about Jaster almost like a little brother. I gotta say, I love the character dynamics between Steve upping him up saying, "This is the Desert Claw, you don't know who Desert Claw is?" And Lilica is haggling the police saying, "Oh, you want the Desert Claw, you pay Desert Claw prices." Entering, you learn that the facility was taken over by Jupus Tuki. The name really took me out because I know with Jupus, it was clear they're going for an alien name. But when I hear Tuki, my brain just associates it with, Tuki Williams, the founder of the Crips, which I doubt a Japanese company was aware of that association. Anyway, Jupus is here because he says his assistant stole his work, framed him, and then Jupus lost his job, and hey, it had good benefits and a really decent 401k. So that's why Jupus is holding everything hostage. As you go through the factory, you meet Steve's creator, Dr. Boccaccio, who says that Jupus is indeed a genius, but unhinged. You then find Jupus, or rather a hologram of him. Thing to note, don't mess with Lilica. She had no idea this was a hologram and still went for that 360 no-scope headshot. You eventually do fight him as a boss, beat him, and then get the factory as a reward with Dr. Boccaccio to run. The head detective did this because ever since Boccaccio's son died, he's been, doing nothing. So this is a way to try to help him get back. He then asks Steve to call every once in a while, which he agrees to. So with your tags finally in place, you head onto the ship, and a parade is taking place where we see the Emperor of Lungardia, along with the Admiral and the Datron execs. Datron's like, "Hey, buy more weapons. You don't know what those dirty Draxians are doing." The Admiral, meanwhile, is trying to find peace, saying, "Hey, if we buy more weapons, the other side is also just going to buy more weapons." And honestly, it doesn't seem that the Emperor is all that cognizant of what is happening. It seems to be hinting he's just a puppet for Datron at this point, as more weapons are purchased. Back at the ship, Jupus joins. He basically bribed the cat, which, yeah, smart move. The captain finally wakes up. He reveals that no, Jaster is not Desert Claw. He's just some kid. Zegrum puts on an annoying face, and the game brushes past this in a good way, with the crew sticking up for Jaster, saying how he's very strong and had helped them out of multiple jams since they met. Dorgangoa agrees on one condition: Jaster has to do this next mission. Dorgangoa's goal is to find the lost legendary planet known as Eden, and a tablet with clues is on the next planet, Vedant. If he passes, he's in. When asked why he was so lenient, Dorgangoa mentions that he got the same feeling from Desert Claw that he gets from Jaster. I like to think it's because Jaster has the Desert Seeker, so Dorgangoa knows that he must have been given to it from the Desert Claw himself. In the quest for one of the 7 star swords, you actually learned that while Dorgangoa was young, he and a friend searched for one, finally getting it, but his crewmate passed away. So Dorgangoa is aware just how treacherous it is to attain a 7 star sword. He had to either been given it or had the skills to obtain it. Now you're on Planet Noir. It's Vadon, but it's a mining planet of perpetual night with old-timey gangsters. It's pretty evident that Hino is a decent fan of film noir. Again, you got dudes in suits with Tommy guns. Simpler times. When you could tell your friends that the Don wants you to do some gooning on the weekends. You can't say that anymore. Well, you can, but it means something way different nowadays. Tony Soprano, you'd be ashamed. You encounter Burton, who's a giant history nerd, which is helpful, and your latest member Digo, someone's deviant art persona, as he's sitting in a bar that belongs to his friend Angela, drinking away the bad times. Again, this has hard-boiled detective story written all over it. Digo used to be in the Longardian army along with his good friend Gale. They left after committing a war crime, attacking a base hearing it was a valid military target, only to their horror find out it was civilians. Betrayed by the government and nowhere else to go, Digo decided to drink away those days, while Gale instead started working for the head gangster of the Moriarty family, trying to attain freedom in his own way. His hands are already dirty, so what's a little more after all? Helping you reach the mines, Digo and Gale have a final face-off. Digo is victorious, but the tablet is taken away by Datron. Angela's gonna leave town, but Digo convinces her to stay, saying that he needs her, and the reason he drank at the bar was because she was there. He says he's gonna come back, but he's gonna travel with his new crew and see what's out there for him. Meanwhile, Gale actually kills the head of the Moriarty clan after they try to off him for failing. Gale's able to take out everyone, but as he's walking by, he's killed by the person he will least suspect, a henchman he bullied earlier, with the henchman saying this is for dad. Gale could kill this kid, but it seems he knows that this is where his story ends, and he doesn't shoot back but rather accepts it. With someone who shed as much blood as him, it only makes sense his end would come on the very streets he tried to escape. I really like this chapter if that wasn't evident, probably because I really enjoy film noir. In this chapter, you also see the start of a side story. Whenever Steve starts to talk to the doctor, Steve actually shuts down, and the doctor's son Mark appears. It seems Dr. Procacccio placed his son's soul into Steve to allow him to experience the adventures he always wanted. Now, this next part can be a negative to some people, but you mostly saw everything the game had to offer, and the next chapters are just going back to the same planets you revisited, but new areas. It's not a negative for me because I know the effort the creators put into making this massive world, but I can see how some people this would be a detriment. The biggest issue for me is that just now at this very point is where you actually get to manage your party. Before, the game shows who was going to be your party members, but now that you're halfway through the game, you can actually choose what members you want. And now, while they all got EXP while they weren't battling, and you could still give them skills on the Revelation board, your equipment is your main source of power, so you're going to have to do a fair bit of grinding if you want everyone to be at a decent position. Back at Rosa, you travel to the desert to see the Datron folks planted the tablet and you fight Seed. It's a battle you can win, and you learn your next objective, which is to find key pieces of the Fallen Kingdoms. All kings who ruled their planets in the era of the fabled Star King, who ruled everything in this galaxy. They're all in places you already visited, but again, this can either be a negative or a positive depending on the person. You're able to choose the order you wish. I just went with the original order. So first is to Jerica, to the Leo King's ruins. Inside, you find a witch who says that you cannot take her Leo King. You also encounter Seed looking for the key pieces. As you go through the temple, you also see Simon's wife and child. Jeez, they are everywhere looking for this guy. You find the witch, and it's kind of sad, truthfully. She drags herself to her treasure, her Leo King, where it's revealed she was a former ruler of Jerica hundreds if not thousands of years ago. She was embroiled in a war on the losing side, and she finally realized the futility of it. She also knows that they will kill her and her baby, her treasure, her Leo King. So she forms a pact with a dark god to become the witch to protect her son till he can live in a time of peace, and in a way her wish is granted. Jaster and the crew give the baby to the Burkakwa to raise, knowing they will take care of him. Now you can just go ahead to the next beast, or you can finally go to the new bonus planet, Altissa, which is the anime beach episode. You might have seen some aquatic aliens throughout the game, and this is their home. They're called Sleegs, which are the fishmen, and Mermals, which are mermaids. And it said there was a war between the two, which led to the complete destruction of the Mermals, -1. She's gone missing, and 2 Sleegs, which are our friends, said they need to find her. And so you look for her, all the while Datron is there. The main scientist's brother is looking for a jewel, and it's implied that Datron doesn't actually need the jewel, but the scientist humors his brother, feeling responsible for the state that his body is in. You find the Mermal, and she's kinda pissed at the, whole Sleegs killed everyone she knows and loves genocide thing. Her buddies tell her Datron is the real enemy. They poisoned the waters and made them fight each other. She then summons, I can't believe I'm saying this, a giant enemy crab, of course. You defeat the crab, and her Sleeg buddies tell her that this planet is massive, so they'll go with her and look for any Mermal tribes that must still exist. With that side quest done, it's time to get back to it. Zerard, where you have the Twin Towers, patent pending LLC. Only way through is for Steve to unleash his limiters. Pikachu is against this as it might kill Steve, but Mark tells him that he has to help his friends. With limits removed, you head into the Twin Towers, patent pending LLC, and meet the spirit of the Libra King. The Libra King once ruled Zerard, and before he passed, he wanted his 2 sons to rule together, but they decided there could only be one king, so instead they fought each other. And even thousands of years later, their spirits continue to quarrel, thinking they're still alive. Zegrum relays this to the booby lady, and she just says, let them get the piece and we'll take it later, which, smart choice, cause this area really blows. You have to scale not 1, but 2 towers, patent pending LLC, and yeah, it's not fun. You encounter Seed once more, but the Desert Claw stops him. Oh, also Burton kinda just died. Yeah, you see his soul when he's fine being dead, saying he can uncover more mysteries now, and zips away. Eventually, you fight each brother, both accusing you of working for the other. When you defeat either one, they both say they should have just gave up the crown and let the other ruled. With both finally defeated, they both pass on into the afterlife with hundreds of their followers that were trapped there. Also, Burton comes back to life. Now time for the final key piece, Vadon, the Cancer King's ruins. It starts with you helping some orphans before they ask you for more help. Orphans, man, always asking for a handout. They've had it too good for too long. So the orphans ask to help their friend Borga. He's a monster, but a nice one. There's no boss here, but you do run into some Datron walkers. After you beat them, you meet the spirit of the Cancer King. It's revealed that Borga was his advisor. All the kings are ones that had regrets. Regrets of war, of children, and now legacy. The Cancer King wanted to build a kingdom that would last the ages. But he tells Borga he's at peace and to join him. Borga passes away, but the kids say they'll stay strong for him. With all the key pieces, it's time to head back to Rosa, but they were all stolen by Zegrum. Datron assembles, but Zegrum betrays them, stating, "You bought my services, but not my loyalty." After what happened to the Warden, Zegrum probably knew that they couldn't be trusted. Jaster arrives as Seed attempts to open a path, but nothing happens. In his rage, he then transforms, but Jaster follows suit. Seed is revealed to be a clone of Jaster, is defeated and called a failure by his father as Jaster opens a path to a new area. Volkov, the head of Datron, once more decides, let's have them do all the heavy lifting. Dorkingova decides to keep Zegrum on the crew, almost like he always knew he was playing both sides. Inside, you discover that Kasawa is potentially fading out of existence along with a robot that isn't powered on, so you have to find his batteries. Burton, meanwhile, is deciphering some hieroglyphics when he discovers Eden isn't what it seems to be. The boss here, again, I must reiterate, is a flaw of the game. I was at level 58 and this guy was still kicking my ass. Boss dusted, you power up the robot, who reveals that Kisala is actually the Princess of Eden, and he gives an item to find said planet. Burton runs in stating he knows what the robot is planning and will stop him before he's killed again, I guess. Volkov, meanwhile, says, you know what? I am the military? And decides to just murder everyone on this planet to get the key to Eden. Raoul uses an EMP to stop him, but is killed in the process. He then tells Jaster he wasn't abandoned, but rather left at the church by his father, and gives him a pendant that will reveal his origins. Jaster's in a funk because, well, his dad died, but Kisala helps him and they venture into the desert. And if that wasn't bad enough, boy, the hits keep on hitting. Mark finally reveals himself to Steve and reveals that Dr. Boccaccio is going to be arrested. It wasn't Mark's soul, but his memories, and backing up memories is illegal. Mark then sacrifices himself, erasing all evidence and thus letting Boccaccio go free. Honestly, it's a bit heartbreaking seeing him losing his son a second time, as Steve himself is conflicted about his place in the world, similar to Jaster. After some trials, you enter a meadow in the middle of a desert named Johannesburg and encounter a woman with the same birthmark as Jaster who challenges you. Once you beat her, she reveals that she is the daughter of the Star King and Jaster's mother, making him a direct descendant of the legendary king, whose power is needed to bring peace to the galaxy. A power so great, the time you're in is actually in its own space-time bubble. Thousands of years ago, Joanna, your mom, saw a plague was devastating the town, separated into its own reality to halt the virus. Leaving, you then see Desert Claw, who reveal he's Jaster's father, that he also wandered into Johannesburg, fell in love with Joanna, and had a kid. She tried leaving, but outside of that bubble, time caught up, and the virus ravaged her, and she passed away. But the Star King's power is so great, she was able to stay as a spirit until the day her son arrived. Desert Claw, knowing that Jaster's destiny lied in the stars, left him with Raoul to help him when the time was needed, ensuring everything would be in its proper place at the right time. This is actually a pretty cool reveal, because around this time, if you did everything, you would have been granted the rank of the top hunter, beating Desert Claw and getting the costume either this chapter or the previous chapter. So it makes sense now that it gets revealed, and I like to think it's his father that gives him the costume. Now it's time for the final chapters, but I'll say it's just one chapter. You head to Eden, also known as Mariglen, and you meet the Queen, Kisala's mother, who reveals that Mariglen is similar to Johannesburg in that it's in a time bubble. That a being known as Mother is responsible for that rune thing that's causing monsters and mutations, and thus to protect the galaxy, Mariglen hid themselves 10,000 years in the past. The crew know what they have to do. Entering the forest, you find her dad, and then you kill her father. Yeah, he was taken over by Mother. Man, there's a lot of patricide going on here. Also, honestly, this fight sucks, so I was kind of glad to kill him off. For such a massive creature, he's really fast, has big areas of effects, and he has a small hitbox. After you kill him, he says the only way to defeat Mother is to go to her lair. So you do, and each character here has a trial, or rather a revelation, to attain a Dragellum, sources of emotion that can defeat Mother. Again, if you didn't think this game was anime enough, you just got proved wrong. For Jaster, it's kinda sweet. He meets his childhood self and realizes his dreams got smaller as he got older. He didn't want to just go to space. He wanted to find a way to revive Rosa, make it back into the green planet it once was. He wanted to find a cure for all diseases. He wanted to see the wonders of the galaxy and help everyone along the way. Jaster, with his dreams back, realizes that even once he defeats Mother, his journey is far from over. Simons is also good. His wife and child are at home. It's revealed his face was scarred in an accident and he has to wear that mask. He didn't want to burden his family, so he left. But he realizes his family is stronger than he gives them credit for, and they're just waiting for him. So he vows, once his journey to complete, to go and reunite with them. Steve sees Dr. Boccaccio and Mark's spirit, where Mark shows Steve a new body the doctor built using Mark's memories. A body for Steve that's more human like he wanted. Steve, though, is conflicted about a new body, but strives to become more human, unaware his self-doubts are the greatest sign of his humanity. Jupus realizes his assistant sabotaged him for good reason. He grew too conceited. If the test went off, hundreds would have died, and it would have crushed Jupus and made him quit his life as a researcher. Jupus realizes that as a scientist, he needs humility and needs to always be doubting himself. Lilica is shown the truth of the day her mother was attacked. She actually froze. She didn't fight to protect her sister. She was only a child, but the truth was so painful she lied to herself. Thus, she finally gains the courage to face the truth of what happened. Again, Digos is a top 3 for me. That film noir, you can't beat it. He meets Gale again, and it's his spirit, and they share a drink and reminisce on the old days. Digo is freed from his guilt of Gale's death, because they were both just soldiers, both trying to seek freedom in their own ways. And there's a cold realization that the roles could have easily been reversed. Thus, Digo reaffirms his friendship. And lastly, Zegram. We see why he's the way he is. He was out with his lover when she saved an old man from being attacked by monsters and died. His girlfriend tells him that he would have done the same, that her death closed his heart, but he has a kindness inside him. With the trials done, you get the Zeosynchros, the only weapon that can stop Mother. Which is funny because there are stronger swords, but still you need to have this weapon equipped to actually fight her. Heading to the lair, the Star King speaks through Jaster and says how Mother used to be a sorceress under his employ, but was so corrupted by Rune that she has no memory of her former life. All she wants to do is spread Rune. So Rune is actually a separate entity that just seeks to corrupt and proliferate. You defeat Mother, but it's not the end. The Datron folks are back and decide, hey, this Rune stuff is great. They can use this Rune stuff to keep making more monsters and to keep selling weapons to fight these monsters. Infinite money trick. Rune, however, has other ideas. It grabs the ship and creates the demon battleship to spread itself. The crew split up, each fighting a different part, and again, I must reiterate, I was level 70, and the only way I found to win was to just keep blocking and just swipe hits when I could. So the Rune is defeated and Morrigan rejoins the galaxy. You now visit the planet 10,000 years in the future because time went normally after that. They say Kisala will be their queen. However, she can't consort with low-class people. Excuse me? Jaster is literally the Star King. There's no one of a higher class than him. Also, we just saved this planet and the galaxy. But it's been 10,000 years, so it wouldn't be a shocker if over time the tale of Jaster and the crew just morphed into Kisala herself. With Kisala locked up, the crew do one final job, take her back, as the game ends. Or does it? Yeah, we got some post-game stuff. The first is the Ghost Ship, led by Erebus. Dorgangoa remarks how he was here years ago, and that the ship arrives every few decades. Inside, you fight Erebus and exorcise him with his butler stating something changed him. You also meet a young Dorgangoa. Steve remarks it was just Dorgangoa's tenacity creating a ghost of himself, but I would rather it be the actual Dorgangoa. That would explain why Jaster felt so familiar to him. With that done, you can now do the Ghost Ship Extreme. But first, a quiz. Yeah, you have to solve a mystery quiz and it's bad. You have to answer 7 questions correctly that come from a pool of around 70, and they're randomized each time. You have to answer all 7 correctly, but the game doesn't tell you if you answered wrong except at the end. So let's say it says 3 correct, you would have no way of knowing which 3, and most of the questions aren't related to the story, but random tidbits and weapons and things town people say in this gigantic game. So yeah, I cheated, and got access to the Ghost Ship Extreme. It's 100 levels, and once you start, you cannot stop. But you can leave if you're not powerful enough. And yeah, it's not bad honestly. It's better than the Chrysler building in Parasite Eve. There's a save point on almost every floor, so if you need to live your life, you can. And even though there are elevators and it's all the same, it's still impressive level 5 created a 100 floor dungeon with no loading screens. There's a boss every 10 levels, with the final being the doppelganger, Seed, who is the hardest boss. The game doesn't say anything, but I love when the post-game has either callbacks or things related to the game. Personally, I think because Seed has a false version of the Star King's power, a version once more that can create time bubbles and make spirits of people in their full power, that when Seed was defeated, he's the one who corrupted Erebus 100 years ago until you finally exorcised him for good. So yeah, the post game is fun if you want, but not needed. And now it's time to talk about the fate of the franchise.
No big deal.
So that was Rogue Galaxy, Level 5's big passion project that was supposed to be the start of the franchise that was going to do well critically and commercially. It, yeah, did. For the former, not so much the latter. It didn't even break 1 million. It actually sold less than Dark Cloud, and everyone has a few reasons why. First, this game could not catch a break. The initial version in Japan came out in the same month as Kingdom Hearts 2 and Tales of Abyss, so that more than likely ate into its sales. And when it finally came out stateside, it was too little too late, because it arrived on January 2007. Earlier that year, Final Fantasy XII was released for the PS2, which for many felt like the swan song of JRPGs for that console generation. And some reviewers felt that Final Fantasy XII was just a superior version of the things being accomplished in Rogue Galaxy, which feels a bit nitpicky. They're both very different in terms of gameplay. The Gambit system, while I did enjoy, is worlds apart from the AI-controlled partners. And yes, graphically, Final Fantasy XII still holds up really well. You can't discount the level of care that Level 5 put into Rogue Galaxy. It's a case of apples versus oranges. I think the big reason why this game failed was the PS3. It came out 2 months after the PlayStation 3 arrived. So at that point, no one really cared about niche games from the previous generation. I love JRPGs, but yeah, if you're trying to get a game for people to play on an older hardware, JRPGs ain't it sadly. Only the most dedicated fans would be playing. I found my original copy of Rogue Galaxy at a pawn shop. Sadly, it was just too unique and not refined enough, so it no longer had much of an audience. And those kind of games don't really come around anymore. I would have loved the sequel that could have smoothed out some of the edges, even allowed more planets. But once more, the industry has changed. If something isn't a hit on release, it's just a one and done deal, which makes it feel like it's for the worse. It's fair to say I love Final Fantasy, but I think if Final Fantasy came out today, it would not become this massive franchise. The first one is really good, but it had some glaring issues like it barely working and was a bug-filled mess, but it had some interesting concepts behind it. The second one is considered something of a disappointment. A game that in my opinion actually expanded a narrative that we associate with Final Fantasy and did a lot of gameplay experimentation, but it faltered in the execution. Part 3, I'm not a huge fan of. They introduced the job system, but personally it felt story-wise they took a step back, deciding to play it safe after their failings of Part 2. Especially because in my opinion most jobs are kinda useless. There's really no need to master most of them. If you just use Monk and Black Belt, you will win 95% of the game. Final Fantasy IV to me feels like the first Final Fantasy game that is true to the vision of the series, with both the battle system being perfectly tuned, along with a grand story that feels like Final Fantasy. It took a while to get there because some games need a sequel to iron out the kinks, but we're past that now. Now you need to be a success no matter what. Games are so expensive that the industry isn't looking to gamble on passion projects anymore. They want games that will appeal to a wide audience as possible, not games that will break the mold or push systems to their limits. We can see this in the use of art styles. Again, only anime arena fighters do cel shading anymore. It's kind of ironic because before the game was released, a producer of Rogue Galaxy was asked on his thoughts that the industry is seeming to veer towards hyper-realistic games. And he said just like CGI didn't destroy traditional animation, this won't stop other art styles from being used, and he's excited for what can be done with new hardware. And boy, was he wrong. Welcome to the piss filter, ladies and gentlemen. There's also so much fertile ground left for a sequel. Maybe the other side, the Traxian Empire? Maybe a game regarding the Star King. Who or what is Rune? Why is memory backup illegal? How did Datron come to be the real power in the galaxy? What happened in those 10,000 years in Maryland? many plot threads that really will never be solved. Level 5 is still in business and is more famous for the Professor Layton and Yokai Watch series of games more than anything else. They mostly work on mixed media projects nowadays, which, hey, I'm always glad for people to keep working. But there is a small selfish part of me which wishes they can do something original with the backing of a large company again. Sony still owns the Rogue IP, but it's pretty clear they have little interest in it besides bare bones HD re-releases and a skin in Astrobot. That's about it. But hey, I'll take the bare minimum. Sadly, this journey ended here. Again, the game has some glaring issues, mostly as it pertains to balance and its main gimmick being the Revelation board, some annoying enemies, and the weapon system. I'll probably replay it again in a few years, but avoid the more annoying parts, because I still enjoy Rogue Galaxy for the battle system, the characters, and its technical achievements. So if you're looking for a good action RPG, I can greatly encourage you to try out Rogue Galaxy. Well guys, gals, and those in between, that's another one in the tin. After the Silent Hill project, I really wanted to play a game that was flawed, but I greatly enjoyed. What's next? Well, we got a few plans. Maybe Dr. Hauser, more Final Fantasy, more Silent Hill. Do I finally go ahead and do that dot hack video I promised? Mortal Kombat Deception? Who knows? Depends, but look forward to the next video, because if anything, I am unfriendly to the algorithm. So be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. So, like always, I'll see you next time. Stay blessed.